Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Taylor, and I'm the Assistant Event Coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers here in Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory, which is the land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of Everything is Fine Here by Iryn Tushabe, published by House of Anansi Press. Oh my gosh, joining us as special guests tonight are Kate O'Gorman and Darla Tenold. Thank you to Irene, Kate, and Darla for being here tonight and for working with us to create this event. Just to note that it is being live streamed, so please be aware of the webcam to your right. And I'd also like to take this time to encourage you to silence your phones for the duration of the event. If you would like to buy copies of Everything is Fine Here, we have some up on the signing table as well as on the desk by where you first walked in. You're welcome to get your book signed before you purchase it. Just please remember to stop by the cash desk on your way out. Our first reader tonight is Darla Tenold. Darla is the author of the 2024 book, A Matter of Right and Justice, 50 Years of Legal Aid in Saskatchewan. She has contributed nonfiction to various issues of Prairies North magazine and the anthology My Wedding Dress, True Life Tales of Lace, Laughter, Tears, and Tulle. Her fiction can be found in Spring Magazine, Volume 10, 2017. She lives on Treaty 6 territory in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Everyone, please give Darla a warm welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thanks to McNally for hosting, and especially thanks to Irene for inviting me to help you celebrate this wonderful, wise, heartwarming book. Everything is fine here. I really, your friendship and support means a lot to me. Yeah. So I'm going to read from the beginning of one of my short stories. The Pigeon Lover. Moira showed up at the library in the late afternoon at my desk under the question sign and said under her breath, "People are talking about you." She massaged her shoulder with her fingers, her black shellacked fingernails pressing up and down, as if she was pounding out a tragedy. Moira, with her watery blue eyes and her unbelievably long lashes, her longing to fit in, glued right there on her eyelids. Mostly on Facebook, she said. And some is even being written about you on Twitter, too. I'd kept a low profile on the World Wide Web, and especially I'd steered clear of the social media hullabaloo. There were too many yahoos on there, spilling their guts, letting their unfiltered mind noise loose for the whole world to see, as if their opinions were fact instead of a disguise for their worst fears. But Moira had found a way to enter that stream of verbal diarrhea and stay clean. She liked and shared only the heartwarming, the soft and fuzzy, the elegant owl kissing the cat. Moira's blue eyes filled with tears. She said, "People are saying you're a pigeon lover." Pigeons were not a part of Moira's world. Moira had, up until that time, been a constant in my life. She wanted a place for me in the world meaning humans and human-created phenomenon, the World Wide Web, the bridges and buses and books. World to Moira meaning book club. But at book club, I was always at risk of expulsion, mainly due to my inability to take any guff. Now, despite my low profile, I was being talked about. Stories typed into devices, into various social media apps, not because of the purple stain on my neck and chin and the related sin of shunning cover-ups such as scarves and turtlenecks, even in winter. Nor was I being talked about because of my unrelenting reading of books, real books, the kind with a spine. And I wasn't being talked about because of my frustrations and intolerances over the failure of the women in book club to read the books, and their failure to think critically, and their failure to engage in considered debate. Their preference for niceness and my preference for realness. Only days before, when I'd been alone at the bus stop, but not alone because of the various people also at the bus stop, people staring at their devices, thumbs flying. A reporter appeared with his cameraman and startled me out of my Atwood. His appearance at the bus stop having had no effect on the bus stop people, except to cause more intense staring, more scanning and scrolling. The slight man thrust his microphone toward my face and said, "Excuse me, ma'am." He was smiling, revealing teeth too big for his narrow face. He said the city had hired an extermination company to remove 1,500 pigeons from under the free range, of which I knew nothing, due to my going to some lengths to avoid means of penetration by the cyber world. Extermination? I said. The reporter directed the cameraman to raise his camera. Certainly, I'd never talked to a reporter before, and I was stunned by his microphone, and by his friendly tone and big teeth, and by his cameraman, whom he directed by the nodding of his head and the raising of his free hand, gesturing his upward palm in a half prayer. Praise be, raise your camera, rise up. Yes, extermination, the reporter said. Wildlife advocates are calling it inhumane. I did not like killing, generally speaking, and especially I did not like mass killing. Also, I did not dislike pigeons. Pigeons being birds, living bird lives, meaning no harm. I didn't know pigeons very well, but I liked their soft, soothing coo, coo. Mostly I felt sorry for them because they look like grandmas with their slim tops and large bottoms, pear-shaped pigeons with their grandma colors. They're gray and purple and emerald green. They're waddling down the street with their heads jutting forward and back, in rhythm with their steps. I did not want to imagine 1,500 killed pigeons. So I'm gonna just skip over some backstory here where our narrator talks about a time when she was 10 and she drowned a gopher. Oh. So I'm picking up the story again. Decades later, in the city, on the bus stop bench, when I was confronted with the question of mass killing of the pigeons, I had no thought of the drowned gopher. I had not spoken of it to anyone, had put it out of my conscious mind completely. But as I said, I didn't dislike pigeons, even though they had a story that cloaked their waddling grandma butts with the threat of disease and death. I was not unaware of this story, but I hadn't known of any pigeon-caused human disease or death. So I said to the reporter and his microphone and his camera, the recorders of history for all time, I don't think it should be done. The reporter took his microphone back and said with relish, "What about all the pigeon feces damaging the bridge?" It didn't occur to me to look away from the reporter and his microphone and his cameraman, that I could say no comment, or that I need not say anything, that I could simply continue reading the Atwood. But the microphone had been thrust toward my face once again, and the reporter was pressing me, as though my response would pardon the pigeons. And I am a person of common sense. If something is dirty, clean it. In response to the excrement issue, I said, "Wash it off." The reporter said, There are several tons of feces on the bridge. Who, I asked, has failed to clean the feces? I admit my question was born of more than mere curiosity, my words having had an undertone of blame. Ma'am, the reporter said, not as friendly. What should be done about the pigeons? Into the microphone, once again in front of my face, and on camera, recorded in history, and which would later be posted online for all time, I said, the pigeons mean no harm by their pooping. Live and let the pigeons live. Thank you. And now it's my honor to introduce my friend and writer extraordinaire, Kate O'Gorman. Kate holds an MFA in writing from the University of Saskatchewan. She was selected as a finalist for the 2024 Writers' Union of Canada Short Prose Competition for Emerging Writers, and her work has appeared or is forthcoming in the New Quarterly, Grain, Arts and Letters, PRISM International, and elsewhere. Kate lives in Saskatoon for now, where she is currently at work on her first novel.
Hey, goodness. Thank you, Darla, for your amazing reading. Hilarious, wonderful, fantastic. Thank you so much, as ever. And thank you, Irene, for inviting me to be here with you on this really exciting day for you. I hope you're soaking up everything that, is so owed to you and to your work, and I'm so honored that you've invited me to be a part of it, so thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit from my novel in progress. What you need to know before I get started is it's 1973. Astrid is 15 years old, and her mother committed suicide about 5 months ago. And Mr. Burr is a substitute teacher at her new high school. She's had to move recently with everything that's happened. And so those are our characters. She's living with her grandparents in a very small apartment in Vancouver. Early Saturday morning, before her grandparents woke, Astrid caught the bus. The only other passengers were up front, a couple leaning into one another, passed out in a seat behind the driver. Astrid walked all the way to the back and scooched in close to the window. She propped her canvas bag on her lap and took out the book Mr. Burr had given her, opening it to page 193, where the flyer worked as a bookmark. She meant to finish it before she saw him again, wanted him to know she could be taken seriously. It wasn't a textbook like she'd thought at first, just a worn trade paperback, the spine cracked and creased so that it practically lay flat when open. Sentences and whole paragraphs had been highlighted, notes scratched in pencil along the margin. A few of the words, like besotted, she'd had to look up, but she liked the sound of them, liked saying them out loud, like it made her more grown up. She was close to the end, but couldn't help flipping back to a dog-eared page near the middle, the same section she'd read and reread countless times already. Heat creeped up her neck and into her cheeks, words like throb and suck, shallowing her breath. She squeezed her knees, the pulse where her legs came together strengthening the further she read. Mr. Burr must have made a mistake. She imagined him at his desk, rifling through his papers and finding the book he'd meant to give her, hidden beneath a pile of ungraded exams. Or maybe he hadn't yet realized his mistake. Maybe there was a way to return the book that might spare them both the embarrassment. Of course, he hadn't said when he wanted the book back, just that they'd talk about it when she was finished, and that she should meet him on Saturday. Nearing the marina, she reached up and pulled the cord. Astrid wore her best blouse and her mother's favorite white skirt. Too long for her, it hung off her hips and trailed around her ankles. She bunched and lifted the hem as she stepped off the bus. The park was huge, a densely forested urban nature preserve spanning 1,000 acres in the middle of Vancouver's downtown. She wasn't sure exactly which way to go. The flyer was thin on details surrounding location, but she had the park map she'd stolen from her grandpa's Buick, not to mention her connection with Mr. Burr, which she felt more and more would lead her in the right direction. She followed the road into the park until it forked, branching through old-growth forest, then kept to the ocean-side path. Would Mr. Burr be surprised to see her? Sure, he'd invited her, but was he expecting her? She imagined his face breaking into a smile when he saw her, his arms pulling her close, and maybe he'd keep an arm slung over her shoulder for the rest of the day, their fingers casually interlaced, and they'd get ice cream and laugh when it ran down their chins. She'd ask if he worried about the difference in their ages, but he'd just brush it off and say it didn't matter, not when you had a soul connection like theirs. Then he'd tell her that he wished he'd known her mom, and she'd tell him how much her mom would have loved him. Around a curve, a group was gathered under a picnic shelter. Astrid counted 27, mostly women, some couples, a few men who looked to be on their own. Some were lined up at a picnic table where 3 packages of store-bought cookies lay open beside a round Coleman cooler. She watched a girl in an oversized sun hat and glasses push down on the plunger and fill a plastic Dixie cup with orange liquid before sitting cross-legged in the dirt. Astrid dug in her bag for the book and checked the flyer. This had to be it. Good book? Astrid flung around, a girl much older, a woman really, and strikingly beautiful with hair pulled back, exposing perfectly sculpted shoulders. No bra beneath her sleeveless crocheted halter. It gets better, you know. A bit racy in places, but worth the time if you can make out Eliot's notes. Heat flared. Eliot? Astrid asked, feigning ignorance. You know. The girl nodded at the shelter. Mr. Burr looked different, even more handsome in his blue jeans and t-shirt, his feet bare and dusty, a guitar slung over his back with a strap. I'm Kip, she said. Eliot told me you might come. Astrid dropped her head, letting her hair curtain. Of course, Mr. Burr, Eliot, whatever his name was, had a girlfriend. How could she have been so stupid? Come on, Kip said, linking her arm around Astrid's. He'll be starting soon. They headed for a group of blankets spread over a small rise. Like Mr. Burr, Kip's feet were bare, her footfall muted on the lush lawn. Astrid unbuckled her sandals before sitting down, smoothing her skirt beneath her seat like her mother had taught. A faint, musty smell rose up from the soft, worn quilt. This is Lucy, Kip said, introducing a girl with red, frizzy hair. Over there is Dove, and that guy is Trevor. Trevor's beard was patchy, just like the hair on his legs beneath the knee. It grew in clumps, exposing dime-sized areas of smooth pink skin. He sat on the blanket behind them, hunched over bent knees, pulling on threads straggling off the cuffs of his shorts and cutting them free with a wood-handled hatchet. No one seemed unnerved that he had a tiny axe, or looked twice when he started to shave his leg hair in the same fashion. Kip went on, and over there are Misty and Gail. They're new too, and that's Big. Astrid hugged her knees. You all know each other? Misty passed Kip a skunky-smelling joint. We knew each other better than anyone, she said, taking a drag before holding it out. Astrid took the roach between 2 fingers, dropping ash onto her lap. She tried to mimic Kip, but the smoke made her eyes water and lungs burn. She forced down a cough. Under the picnic shelter, Mr. Burr picked out a melody on his guitar. She didn't recognize it, but felt sure she knew it somehow, like maybe she'd heard it a long time ago. A couple who'd been flying a kite in the field came closer, and that guy behind them, Trevor, sat up and hushed them. Astrid understood why. Mr. Burr cast a spell. I know you, he finally said, his voice rising above the notes. The crowd quieted. I know you feel awkward and ashamed, no matter what you do. You're never good enough. He sounded different than he did at school. Astrid looked around. All eyes were on him, tracking him as he sauntered from one end of the shelter to the other, the imprint of his heel, his toes pressed into the packed dirt. I also know that you are more than you give yourself credit for. He stopped playing and shifted the guitar onto his back, coming closer to the crowd. I wish you could see what I see. Life isn't what the world tells you, you know. Admit it, nothing makes sense here. Name one thing on this planet that makes sense right now. The crowd stirred. You can't do it, can you? But there has to be something more. Because if this is it, if this cardboard white bread world is all there is, then we may as well do ourselves right now and get it over with. The crowd chuckled nervously. A scene flashed: her mother's bedroom, cold and gray, a toppled orange pill bottle, and a million tiny tablets scattered on the floor like larvae. Now I know what you're thinking. Why should I listen to this guy? What in the world makes him so special? I'll tell you. You see, I've been given a gift to see past what is ugly in this world. My eyes have been anointed to see what is truly beautiful. And what I see is you. Astrid held her breath. I know you've known loss. I know you get sad. So sad it's sometimes hard to get out of bed. Aren't you tired of being lonely all the time? I am here to tell you that there is a way to heal. Look around you. Astrid turned to Kip, to the others on the blanket with her. We are family. We have chosen to walk together in beauty and in light, living and loving as members of one body. Kip leaned into Astrid. Kaleida, she whispered. Astrid had never heard of it before. She tested it out, vowels filling the back of her throat, the consonants clattering past teeth over the soft mound of her tongue. Eli's voice rose in pitch. You might be saying to yourself, this is too good to be true, and you're right. Choosing to live in beauty and in light doesn't happen overnight. It takes discipline, it takes commitment, it takes sacrifice. But the fact that you're here means something. It shows that you're special. More importantly, it shows that you're ready to let go of a world that is broken, a world that has nothing to offer you anymore. And that you're ready to say yes to a new life, a new family. Will it be challenging? Sometimes. I'll be honest, you will be asked to die to yourself and to the life you knew. But just like Christ himself, I promise you there will be life waiting for you on the other side of it. Will it be scary? At first, maybe a little. But ask anyone here and they'll tell you it's worth it. From the corner of her eye, she noticed an older couple slip quietly down the hill and head for the path. Now I get it, if you're uncomfortable right now, Eli continued. I'd be worried if you weren't. Another collective chuckle rose up. But if you were invited here by someone from the family, it means they saw something in you. It means they understand how precious and beautiful you are. It means you belong here. He swung his guitar back around and plucked out the same 3-riff chord riff, this time starting to sing about beauty and belonging. Then the same strange word repeated over and over, Kalos, 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 like a mantra. A murmur rose up, and those who knew the words sang along. Astrid couldn't take her eyes off him. Bodies shuffled as Mr. Burr made his way through the crowd. She watched as he stopped to hug that girl in the giant hat, then shake hands with the couple with the kite. He met her eye now, and her heart raced as he climbed the grassy knoll, slipping a little on the grass. Astrid, he said, you made it. His front tooth was a little crooked. She noticed for the first time, and his shirt beneath his underarms sweat-stained. He held either side of her face and touched his forehead to hers. I see you, Astrid Kalos. His breath was sweet from the orangeade, and you are so beautiful. When he let go, Kip took his place. Her blonde hair sparkled against the sun. You are beautiful, Astrid Kalos. After her, Trevor got to his knees. The hatchet now hanging from his leather holster on his belt, the wooden handle knocking gently against his emaciated hip. He repeated the greeting, as did Dove and Lucy. Big, his name befitting his size, a guy with thick, dark arm hair and glasses, wrapped her in a bear hug, nearly cutting her breath. Past his shoulder, Mr. Burr was making his way back to the shelter. All around her, the crowd chorused, Kalos, Kalos, Kalos. And she let her voice join in. Thank you. So, as I said, I'm very excited to be able to be here and to welcome Iryn, who is the star of this evening. We were reminiscing that Darla and Iryn and I were all at Sage Hill in 2017, I think we said, right? And I remember that very clearly because I was just new in the writing community in the emerging section. And Iryn was, I think you had gotten a scholarship that year and you were front and center. You were so part of the scene. And I just remember looking from afar and thinking, I want to be her friend. Oh. And I'm very excited and very humbled and very pleased to say that I am. And she's an amazing friend. All of you who are here who know her know just about her kindness and her generosity, just her loveliness as a human being. So thank you. Formally, Iryn Tushabe is a Ugandan-Canadian writer and journalist. Most recently, her nonfiction has appeared in the Walrus and in the Press Anthology, River in an Ocean, Essays on Translation. Her short fiction has twice been included in the Journey Prize stories, the best of Canada's new writers. And she was a finalist in the Caine Prize for African Writing in 2021 and 2023, winner of the Writers' Trust McClelland and Stewart Journey Prize. So no small things. Tushabe's work won the City of Regina Award in 2020 and in 2024. And Everything is Fine Here from House of Anansi is her debut novel, and an amazing novel it is. So please help me welcome Iryn to come and share some words from that book.
Oh my goodness. So excited to be here. I thought I only knew a few people in Saskatoon. I was prepared to read to two people. That is something that I'm always happy to do. But I'm glad there's more than two. So thank you so much for coming. And thank you, Darla and Kate, for reading with me. It's been wonderful to grow into our paths together. And I'm excited to see more of your work. And to be here amongst my mentors and people whose writing I feel tries to get at the same things that I'm reaching for. Thank you so much. It means the world to see you here today. So Everything is Fine Here takes place in Uganda, which is the country where I'm from. It centers two sisters, 18-year-old Aine Kamara and her sister Mbabazi, who is a gynecologist and has recently returned from Canada, where she was studying to become an infertility expert. And so Aine is at her all-girls boarding school in Western Uganda at a school called Pike Girls. And a little while back, her headmistress told her that her sister would be coming to give the Careers Day keynote speech. And, you know, Aine hasn't seen her since she came back from Canada. And it's been almost 3 years. She just cannot wait to see her. And she's sitting by the school gate, just waiting for the car to drive through so that she can be reunited with her sister. And so I will start there. The passenger window slid down, revealing her big sister's face. Kanyoni, Babazi shouted, giving Aine wings, the sensation that she could leap up and fly. Babazi! Aine matched her sister's high note of excitement. She bounded to where the car was pulling up. She bounded towards where the car was pulling up. Babazi slammed the passenger door and ran to meet her, her hands waving above her head as if she were rearranging the clouds. Aine threw her arms around her sister's narrow waist and squeezed. She breathed her in, resting for a while in her embrace. Now Babazi tilted Aine's chin, her thumb tracing across Aine's cheek to her ears, as though she were reminding herself of how the parts of her face fit together. How is it possible you haven't changed at all? She asked in Ruchiga, the language of their birth. How is it possible you've changed so much? Aine spoke Ruchiga too, though English was mandatory on campus. Mbabazi had trimmed her hair and permed what remained into short, wet-looking curls tinted burnt yellow, like the sun rising. It had the effect of making her fair skin look even lighter. Have I? Mbabazi said doubtfully, raising her right hand to the back of her neck. It suits you, this look, Aine said. The short hair. I'm not sure about the relaxer, though. The smell of cooked hair. Weren't there any salons for Black people in Toronto? People who knew how to install braids? Mbabazi patted the air dismissively. You get used to it. Aine grinned. All that mattered was that her sister was here. Her sister who had inherited every bit of Mama's Tutsi loveliness, so that by the time Aine came along more than a decade later, all that remained were Papa's indelicate Bachiga features. You did these yourself? Mbabazi was running her hands over the bumps of Aine's chunky cornrows. Zai, Aine said, my roommate, my bunkmate. Speaking of friends, Mbabazi gestured toward the driver who had just closed the car door and was crossing toward them on the Paspalum lawn. She had the shape of a mother, big bones and soft curves, widely spaced fawn-like eyes, a smooth complexion of the blackest black. This is my roommate, Achen. A name from the north, possibly Acholi. Achen flashed a brilliant smile, teeth like the sun on white paper. Delighted to finally meet you, Aine, she said, pumping Aine's hand. M talks about you all the time. She does? Then why was this the first time Aine was hearing of this roommate who spoke English with an accent too BBC to be genuine? All the time, Achen confirmed. I'm sorry, Aine said, but I can't say the same. Achen massaged her massive afro, chunky tufts dyed a cola color, black with a bit of red trapped inside. She cast a sideways glance at Mbabazi, who fixed Aine with a look. I could have sworn I told you about her, Mbabazi said. Achen? It was not a name Aine would have forgotten easily. It conjured a very specific image and smell, the mineral scent of charcoal just doused with water. Aine stared back at her sister and shook her head. Aine knew she'd let her sister down. Mbabazi scrunched up her face as if caught in a lie. She turned to her roommate. I'm sorry. Achen smiled. It's all right, love. You know it's fine. I meant to, Mbabazi said. I should have. Achen squeezed Mbabazi's shoulder. I promise, it's nothing. Sure you know that. And now Aine knew too. She understood the thing that was announcing itself to her, the strange electricity between Mbabazi and Achen. They were looking at each other in that way lovers had, communicating in a language they thought impenetrable, as if they were the ones who'd invented it. Aine suppressed a gasp. What to do with this knowledge? We shouldn't keep Madame waiting, Mbabazi said. The Askari called up to the house when we came in. Fear shot up Aine's spine at the mention of Madame. Not too long ago, it was announced at an impromptu General Assembly that 2 senior 5 girls had been discovered snogging in a bathroom they were meant to be mopping and would be expelled. Lesbianism offends God, Madame had said before quoting from scripture. Nothing is covered up that will not be revealed or hidden that will not be known. You're both staying here? Aine heard herself ask. At Madame's all weekend long? A hint of disappointment came over Achen's face. Would you rather I didn't? Aine opened her mouth to respond, but Mbabazi shot her a threatening look, a hard glint in her eyes that said, stop it right now. Turning to Achen, she asked if she wouldn't mind going on ahead and parking the car. She indicated the spot in the distance between Madame's residence and the sick bay. Little sis and I will catch up. Achen strode purposefully to the vehicle. When the engine roared and the car lurched forward, Aine turned to her sister. Have you forgotten this place? What it's like? Mbabazi reverted to her usual evasive self. She stepped into the gravel road, sad in awe, widening her eyes. Everything is just as I remember it. Her gaze swept over the sick bay to the main hall with its graffitied walls and lingered on the laboratory block beyond the netball court to its right. Girls hung out on the rows of concrete steps that seemed to hold the brick building upright, except shorter somehow, you know? Aine exhaled, exasperated. I mean, buildings don't shrink. You know those big bulldozer tractors that flatten roads? Mbabazi said. It's like one of them sat on the lab and sunk it into the ground a little. Aine chuckled. How long exactly since you went here? 14. No, 15 years. Goodness me, has it really been that long? Am I that old? She drew a deep breath and started walking up the road lined with flower beds. Aine interlaced her fingers between her sisters. Speaking of years, she said, tugging at Mbabazi's hand to slow her long-legged stride. How long since you've had a roommate? Going on 6 years. 6? Aine squeaked. Sadness rushed at her, so real, she could feel it course through her stomach to her fingers. She always told Mbabazi everything. How hard could it be for her sister to reciprocate for once, to say, oh, by the way, Kanyoni, your big sister has found love. But Aine wouldn't cry. Well, most likely she would. But wouldn't she be within her rights? Mbabazi was her one and only sister. In the near distance, Achen opened the boot of the car and heaved an oversized rucksack onto her back. Looking at her, Aine realized Mbabazi had brought Achen to a place where only Aine, not Mama or Papa, could meet her. This was an introduction. Mbabazi was finally opening the door into her very private life and saying to Aine, come on in if you want. That made Aine smile. I love it, she said. Did you have a roommate? It's brilliant. Really? Mbabazi halted. Her eager response took Aine aback. Mbabazi had never needed Aine's approval before. Would you care if I didn't? She chuckled. Too bad. She's just a roommate and nothing more, right? Mbabazi shrugged. That's what I said. Aine kicked at a miniature wall of rocks that encircled a flower bed. The marigolds shuddered, wagging their little orange tongues. Given the choice, Mbabazi would rather walk barefooted over burning embers than be straight with her. Just, she said, we'll have to be careful around Madame, won't we? Mbabazi slung her arm around Aine's shoulder and pulled her in. Is it fun worrying all the time? She said. You're going to get wrinkles before I do. So I'm going to skip ahead, but in skipping ahead, I'm also skipping back. This is a little scene that I wanted to introduce you to, and it's the first time that Mbabazi attempted to come out to Mbabazi, to Aine. It was a long time ago when Aine was almost 13 years old. And this scene happens after they've been to Madame's and they've had supper, and Aine is now back at her desk. They have to do this 2 hours of study before they go to bed called prep time. If you've gone to boarding school, perhaps you know that. If you've not, it's not fun. You're forced to study before you go to bed. Okay. One day when Aine was 13, Mbabazi refused to go to the vestry after Sunday service. She had arrived home unannounced just the evening before. When church concluded, she shoved her travel-sized Bible into her purse and walked home with Aine and Mama. In fact, she walked a step ahead, the breeze blowing her floral dress about her ankles. You're completely healed now? Mama called to her. Everything is fine? Well, maybe I don't want to live my whole life suffering over something that can't be changed. Mbabazi walked faster in her chunky heels as if to discourage any further questions. But as soon as they got home, Mama called Mbabazi into her bedroom. Aine tiptoed to the closed door and pressed her ear to it. Their voices rose over each other, but Mbabazi was loudest. Say you're sorry that I've been trying all my life to change who I am. Say I don't have to do it anymore. Say I'm not a mistake. Aine could never forget how Mbabazi stormed out, her face glistening with tears. You've only ever cared about what other people think, but what about me? What about my happiness? Mbabazi packed her duffel bag, carelessly tossing her clothes and shoes inside and zipping it only halfway, a hairbrush sticking out. Aine thought she'd never see her sister again. She ran after her, crying and begging her to stay, but Mbabazi broke into a sprint and did not look back. Wait. Okay, gosh. The following day, Aine and her classmate Isaac were representing Bigodi Primary School at the regional debating competition in Kamwenge. Her heart did a pirouette inside her chest when she stepped out onto the podium and saw Mbabazi standing tall at the back of the Catholic social hall where the debate was taking place. She waved at her, and Mbabazi waved back. Aine's body buzzed as though filled with bees. Throughout the debate, she kept looking at Mbabazi just to make sure she was still there. As soon as the debate finished, she ran to find her. For someone who had stormed from home in tears the evening before, Mbabazi was surprisingly in high spirits. She swept Aine off her feet and swirled her round and round. What kind of a 12-year-old throws around words like zeitgeist? Aine was dizzy and giddy with excitement. In the warmth of her sister's praise, she felt taller, smarter. They crossed the road and went to sit on the front steps of the Catholic Church, Mbabazi pretending to be a journalist interviewing Aine about her victory. Ms. Kamara, where will you display this fine medal? She asked of Aine's crested crane carved out of wood. The school will keep it, I'm sure. Aine spoke into Mbabazi's fist microphone. Ms. Kamara, Mbabazi said, in the current zeitgeist, what are your thoughts on your sister being gay? Gay? What sort of a question was that? What, like happy? Who in their right mind was opposed to joy? Being gay is definitely cool in the current zeitgeist, Aine declared. At first, Mbabazi just looked confused. Then she was laughing her heart out. This moment, she said, I'll never forget it. Did I say something wrong? Aine said. No, you're my hero, Mbabazi said. My little innocent hero. Let's go find Isaac. I'm going to buy you two all the ice cream you can eat. Would you come home for Christmas? Aine asked. I could never stay away from you, Kanyoni, Mbabazi said, suddenly tearful. Trust me, I've tried. It's just not possible. Only after starting secondary school at Pike did Aine Google gay and learn that although it did mean lighthearted and carefree, it also, and more importantly, meant something else. Homosexual, lesbian, kuchu. But by then, Mbabazi had grown circumspect, unwilling to revisit the conversation. Each time Aine had raised the subject, casually bringing up news headlines, Uganda court annuls anti-homosexuality law, Bishop Tutu's daughter quits priesthood after gay marriage, Botswana decriminalizes homosexuality in landmark ruling. Mbabazi had grown prickly. Give it a rest, will you? She'd bark. As the years went by, Aine had entertained the thought that perhaps Mbabazi wasn't all the way gay, or that she had found some way to not be gay at all. And I will stop there. I think, yes. So much. I don't know if anyone has any questions. And if there aren't any questions, I'll keep reading and bore you. So. Oh, there you go.
I'm wondering if you can share a little bit of your writing process with us. Like, how many drafts did you need to go through until you found your story?
Yeah. Uh, I'm glad that Alexander Popov is here. A very long time ago, when this story was still a short story that wasn't working, I got a chance to work with her through the Writers Guild mentorship program, and the story still just wasn't working. I think it wanted to be a novel, but I didn't know that it wanted that at the time. But anyway, by the time that my mentorship with Alexander ended, I had decided that I would just continue, that I would just write and write and see where I ended. That draft was really long and really bad. I suppose because I'm a journalist, but I didn't realize I was writing fiction, or it was just like a long, rumbly editorial that was just like a diatribe, you know. And I think I was just angry at having grown up bisexual in Uganda and Christian, and having been taught that the only way to exist in the world is to pray this thing out of myself. And so that's just all the anger and frustration went into that draft. And once I finished it, it was clear to me that I couldn't show it to anybody. Even I couldn't read it. It was just, I couldn't even salvage any of its parts. But it had done its job for me. It had helped me purge all my anger and frustration. So when I attempted, from scratch, and I decided that perhaps a good way to do it is to distance myself from the story. So now I Aine tell the story, and I'll slowly I stepped out of her way and allowed her to be the narrator, and then it was actually quite interesting to write. Then it was adventurous. I was always looking forward to coming to the draft because I was surprised by the choices she was making, and she was just this really smart young woman, way smarter than I ever was. She says things like, I've read enough novels to know when patriarchy is disguising itself as chivalry or romance. And I did not read enough books to realize that at her age. So she was infinitely interesting for me to come back to. That said, writing a novel is just a lot of work. You grow tired, and at heart, I think I'm a short story writer. Is the form I most adore. So I put it aside a few times, the novel, and wrote short stories, because those are infinitely more fun to write and harder, I think, harder for me anyway. But just the idea of if you have a finished first draft, then it's exciting to come back to it because you can hold all of it in your head and you can revise and revise. And I've learned to look at revision as a process of love, because I'm returning to something and I'm tending to it and I'm making it beautiful. It's harder to do with a novel because if you change something here and then you disturb the whole lake, and it's hard to, that's how writer's block comes in. Because just I don't know what else I need to change. But I'm so glad that I stuck with it. And it took perhaps 6 years to have a draft that I could show. But I'm grateful that it took that long, because I think even in the writing of it, I continued to learn and I continued to change and to accept my place in the world and to celebrate my place in the world, and to really make beautiful my characters, to focus on the characters and not their oppressors. Thank you for asking that beautiful question. There was another hand back there. Yes.
Where did this story come from?
Where did it come from? I suppose it was born out of that angry first draft that I did. Even though I changed the voice, even though I stepped back and really imagined, I really fictionalized it so that not a lot of myself is in there at the end of it. But I think it came out of my departure from Christianity, which I was raised to have faith in, absolute faith in this Christian God. And I think once I lost my faith in God, I became a little worshipful, actually, of people. I loved people more than more than when I was a Christian and seeking to change them and to and now I was spending more time with books, and I was having, reading work that showed me that I don't have to be certain about where I'll end up when I die, that certainty. And I love stories that dwell in that uncertainty. I love when because I think the fear when you're a Christian is that you're going to end up in hell. It's just like, once you get rid of that and it's not a concern, I feel like you can relate with people more. You can relate with the world around you more. And even the beyond human, Darla was reading about pigeons, just I adore that. And so I think the story came out of everything I had experienced and things that I wanted to see, work that I wanted to read. Because whenever I read literature from Africa and even from elsewhere in the world where queer people are oppressed, it tends towards the tragic. It tends towards the suffering and the turmoil. And I know that that's real in the world. But what if we focused on the beauty? What if we zoomed in on how they queer people are resisting the oppression that is external, and spend time in their internal world, what kinds of thought processes they go through, how they live their lives, how they resist the colonialism and homophobia. I think I wanted to, and I hadn't read a story really that was told from the perspective of a family member. Just like that violence of having somebody you love taken away from you simply because they would rather spend their time with a woman. They would rather marry a woman. Just like, what kind of bullshit is that? There's an African proverb that goes, when elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. And she just she just wants to be with her sister, and she just wants to love her and spend time with her, and to just have her ripped her away from her for reasons that are bullshit. She just, I feel like that's a particular kind of violence too. There might be time for one more question, if there is any. Yes.
It's a story about sisters. A beautiful relationship between two sisters. And I'm wondering if you could talk about how and when you decided to write from Aine's perspective as opposed to, say, from Bozzy's perspective when you're writing a story about Kuchu.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I think it came about after I realized that trying to tell it from the perspective of someone whose experiences might be too similar, too close to my own, would kind of maybe lead me down another bad draft. I wanted to have a bit of distance, but I also really wanted to show that when governments legislate morality, I wanted to show it from the family level, just the kind of havoc it wreaks on one particular family. Just kind of zoom in, and it seemed to me that like a queer person telling a story from their own experiences is something I had seen, but I hadn't seen it from someone who is getting affected by this legislation. That is not directly affecting her, but is affecting the people around her, which by association is a violence on her as well. I think Aine says at some point that she wishes there was an authority she could report, because part of what happens here is there's a kind of disinheritance. Babazi is asked to choose between her partner or her family. And Aine cannot believe that it's come to that. And so who could she report this injustice to? Nobody. There's also a story about I grew up next to a forest, when actually now that village where I grew up, my house has been reabsorbed by the forest. It doesn't exist anymore. That's how closely we live to the forest. And we didn't have running water, we didn't have television. We had one radio that my father monopolized. So all we had at the end of the day were each other, and I had a big family. We tell each other stories. They're called emigane. And my favorite story to tell, it's just folk stories, folk tales that everybody knows how it begins and how it ends. But the way it works is that you get really good at telling one that people can even bribe you to tell it because you're so good at it. And I was good at telling the story of Munguma and Nyanja, which is a story that's also in this book that when I was thinking about that, when I think about Aina and Bawazi's closeness and the hurdles they go through, I think that it's just a broadening of that folk story. And the way it goes is that Munguma and Nyanja, they're in this, so they're living their lives with their mother, and then this goddess she's called Nyavinji, the goddess of plenty. You know how gods like to just have fun with people. She walks around the village and she puts people to test, and whoever like welcomes her, she will bless, big harvest, and if you don't welcome her, she will curse you. So she came to the girl's house, and their mother was unkind to her. So she put a curse on their mother, so that she was suspended between life and death. Her eyes were open but not seeing. Like there was just barely a pulse. It's like her pulse was like a memory of a pulse. So the girls pursued the goddess to the forest to try and get their mother back. And the goddess just put them to the test, using phantasmagoric illusions, and tortured them pretty much for a very long time. By the time she got bored because she couldn't break their spirits, and gave them a candle to bring back home, and she said, you can burn it next to your mom, and when the candle burns out, she will awaken. And by the time they came back, their mother was still suspended at the age where it's very many years had passed, so that they had surpassed their mother in age. They were older than her. And so they're asking themselves, is she still our mother? Because we're older than her. Like, what name is there for a mother that is younger than you? And they're burning the candle, and it's a magic candle. It's perhaps another test. Can a magic candle burn forever? Is their mother going to ever awaken? And I think for me, that story is the encapsulation of this novel, in that Mbabazi and Aine, they're going through all of this to try and get their mother unstuck from her, Christian colonial, hateful, really, homophobic ways. And is she going to get unstuck? Are they going to be reunited? I don't know. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for gracing us with your presence. Thank you for reading with me, Darla and Kate. It's just really been an honor to share and to spend this time and be in community with all of you.
Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. She will be at the table to sign some books, but once again, just remember to stop by on the cash desk and purchase them on your way out. Thank you and have a great night.